What's going on? Welcome to Victims and Villains. If you guys are new to this channel, we are mental health through pop culture. My name is Captain Nostalgia. I am a writer, podcaster, and the director of our film festival, the first festival of its kind to be horror-centric and mental health focused. If you guys would like to submit your screenplays, short films, and feature films, click the links in the descriptions below. And while we're on the subject, thank you to our very special festival sponsors, Diabolical DVD, Convicted Printing, and Fierce Literature. If you guys would like to check out links on those guys, as well as where you guys can also get your become a sponsor yourself, click the links in the descriptions below. Down there you'll also find links to all of our social media, more movie reviews like this, podcasts, and most importantly, our mental health resource library. Now, I've only done this a handful of times on this channel, but we're going to be talking about television today. And typically, I try and stick away from television because I feel like, for me personally, I'm not speaking for Victims and Villains as a whole. I just feel like it's a lot to kind of talk about and to kind of overkeep. But this one's special because we're celebrating the upcoming release of Creepshow Season 3. Creepshow is an anthology series that is airing on Shudder. First two seasons are currently out on DVD, Blu-ray, and digital, and you guys can from RLJE Films, and you guys can also pick up Creepshow Volume 3 on Blu-ray and DVD, as well as wherever you guys get your digital from, beginning this Tuesday, December 6th. This film, as a Blu-ray, this package does offer some pretty cool things. First off, for those of you guys that may or may not be familiar with Creepshow, it's an anthology film that began in the early 80s from the minds of George A. Romero and Stephen King, spawned a trilogy of movies, some of which have been received really well, some of which have are best to be forgotten, but Shudder a couple years ago picked it up because of Greg Nicotero and created an anthology series based around it. And what's really cool about the packaging and owning this physically is, if you know about how Creepshow kind of began its origins, it's also tied into the comics world, and this one actually also features a comic. So each episode and each story begins off as a comic, then transitions over to real life, and some of the comic illustrations are able to be had here in physical format. And this is really cool just to kind of hold in your hands. It breaks down all of the talent involved in the episode, which episode it's responding to, personalized cover, and more. And as a someone that collects physical media, this is just a cool addition to have. In terms of special features, this one is really for those of us that enjoy kind of learning a little bit more about the behind the scenes. It has the Comic-Con at Home panel from Amazon, but also at the same time it also has a lot of behind the scenes bloopers, footage, and scenes as well. I'm a cinephile and I really enjoyed the special features for this one, but I know that is not kind of everyone's forte, and if you guys would not like that, you guys just want to see what's on there, let's talk about the season as a whole. Now, for the purposes of this video, I will be counting down my top 5 stories from this season. But as a whole, I feel like the majority of these stories are really well written, they're really well shot, they're really well lit. But I feel like there are some cheesy and campiness that gets in there. The story that kind of kicks off the season, called Mums, is worth talking about in terms of that, because the cheesy and the acting, I feel like, is most highlighted in that one. To be honest, it's probably my least favorite story out of the entire season. But I feel like this series also has a lot of really interesting morals. So overall, I'm going to go ahead and give the Blu-ray on our Rorschach rating scale a 3 out of 5 for special features, and I'm going to go ahead and give this season as a whole a 4 out of 5. Before I jump into talking about the countdown aspect of this, I will say I feel like this series does do a lot of really strong things. This season is exceptionally strong, and I also really like what Shudder has done in the past in this, not only doing the seasons where they're, like I said, there's 2 other seasons out there. There's an animated special and there's a holiday special that they've released in the last few years, and they've all been really well done. Nicotero and the team do a really good job at continuing on that tradition. And with that, let's talk about an honorable mention before we jump into the list. The honorable mention that I want to shout out is actually called Time Out. It is the front end of episode 5. Basically, it tells the story of this lawyer that is attempting to inherit this wardrobe from his grandmother, and going into the wardrobe actually is like another dimension, speeds up time. This one was really fun, and it also kind of really brings in terms of mental health, the aspects of realizing how precious time is and the relationships that we have. Proves that how far are you willing to sacrifice to appease the boss and the means by which you provide for your family, but also is it really worth sacrificing the family in the long run things. I just felt like this one was really well shot, really well acted, but it didn't quite crack the top 5, but I wanted to give it a shout out nonetheless. At number 5, I wanted to also give the flip side of episode 5 a shout out with The Things in Oakland's Past. This is the only animated one of the season, and I feel like this one's really well done. The animation's a little bit crude, but it kind of works for the charm that it's trying to do. This one's probably one of the more sci-fi heavy episodes. Not to mention, it boasts the talents of Mark Hamill and Danielle Harris. I think this one is just, again, it really stood out being the only animated segment in this season, but also at the same time, it's got a lot of weird and a lot of quirkiness. It's really well paced, and overall, it's just it was a solid episode. Number 4 is The Stranger Sings. If you've met me in real life, you know that I have a love and a passion for mermaids. Just 2 titles here to kind of reflect that. Little Mermaid, obviously, but if you've never seen the lore, please check it out because it is a Criterion movie for a reason. It's a very weird and very strange Polish movie that just is like, it's a musical. Just check it out. But for The Stranger Sings, this one embodies the abilities of a siren without it being mermaids. Essentially, a gynecologist gets lured by a siren to swap out her voice box with a mortal's. And in the essence of doing so, there is just a lot of weird things that happen in this. I liked the ability of kind of experiencing the world and the lore of mythology of sirens without it necessarily being mermaids. I thought it was really a nice touch. The acting in this one's really strong. The premise is really straightforward. It's well paced. And it captures the siren spirits without inherently being aquatic, which again I thought was a beautiful touch. And it just felt like someone that really likes the lores of mythology when it comes to mermaids. This one was really just such a refreshing spin on something really familiar. Number 3, this is the front end of the season finale with drug traffic. This one tells the story of a sick girl trying to make it through immigration only to get stopped by Michael Rooker and has an out-of-body experience that is truly crazy. What I think this one does really well is I think this segment embodies J-horror without inherently being J-horror. It feels like a perfect love letter to that portion of horror and to that country. If you guys have never seen a Japanese horror movie, they are truly bonkers, and I love the out there ideas and just how everything flows within those genres. And I feel like this segment just captures those really well. Michael Rooker in this is pretty much very straightforward and kind of just getting to see a very conventional politically minded character like Rooker take on an otherworldly J-horror aesthetic was a really interesting dynamic, and I thought that this one just balanced it really well. It took me by a lot of surprises. It kept me to the edge of my seat, and ultimately, like, it just was kind of really creepy. There's practical effects in this one, and the special effects in general just are top notch, probably the best in the season, and I really admired this one. Number 2 is from the second episode. It's the front of the second episode, but it's The Last Subaraya. So this one tells the story of an art collector that essentially acquires the lost piece of a Japanese artist by the name of Tsuburaya and burns the painting and is haunted by the demons buried within the painting afterwards. So this one stars Brandon Quinn, and I love Brandon Quinn as an actor. I know that he probably doesn't get talked about enough, and people are probably watching this right now. They're just like, I don't know who this is. And I know when you talk about gateway horror, comments like, are you afraid of the dark? Goosebumps always come up. But one of the things that I want to kind of put out there is that Brandon Quinn was also in another gateway horror show for me. It was called Big Wolf on Campus. And so over the years, I've kind of just seen him pop up randomly, and getting to see him like as an adult myself, and kind of getting to see him just embody the emotions that this segment required, and the practical effects. Like, this one was just, it gripped me in ways that are just unspeakable to me. I was really captivated by Quinn's performance in this. I think the practical effects in this one are haunting. It's just such a good segment, and this is one that I'm going to highly recommend from this series. This one and my number one really were neck and neck for which one it's going to be. I think the aesthetic of this one's really creepy. I like the lighting, the way that everything is kind of paced out throughout the course of it. The way the demons look in this are really awesome, and they're really creepy. My number one pick is going to be called Skeletons in the Closet. This one tells the story of a gentleman that runs a museum of movie props, specifically from the horror genre, and how far he's willing to go to kind of get the ultimate prop. As a cinephile, I love stories that are about movies, and this one, as a personal level, like, it just had me laughing. It brought me to the edge of my seat. The practical effects in this are really cool. The kind of the special effects kind of throw it back to Army of Darkness with its kind of claymation aspects to it, and this one was just a lot of fun. It's probably one of the more absurd segments in this season, and it just really embraces that absurdity. It has great homages to Army of Darkness, Psycho, and really just and Creepshow as a whole. I love kind of one of the last shots in this is the Creepshow skeleton from the original film with the anthology series, Shudder series, kind of like just hanging out. But what's really cool about this one is if you're a movie buff like me, you kind of are going throughout like the camera pans, and you're just kind of looking at being like, I know where this is from. I know where this is from. Like, there's nods in this one to Jason Goes to Hell, Freddy Krueger and Nightmare on Elm Street, Evil Dead 2, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and that list just goes on and on and on. And I really loved it. I had a blast doing that one. So there's going to be no mental health moment for this video mostly because it's a countdown. And if you guys are new to our content, we typically don't do mental health themes with countdowns. However, I want to take this time and this platform to just remind you that you are not alone. So if you or someone you know is struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, please click the links and check the show notes below to check out our mental health resource library, where you can get mental health resources covering everything from suicide prevention, bullying, domestic abuse, and much more. You guys can pick up Creepshow on Blu-ray beginning this Tuesday, December 6th. We'll have a link in the show notes below where you guys can pre-order from Best Buy. And until next time, remember, hit that subscribe button. Have a good one.